out on the water. When did you first know that something had gone terribly wrong?
About 3:30 in the morning, my wife and I woke up to somebody pounding on the side of the boat. And so I put on a pair of shorts, walked through my salon, and as I opened the door, there were 5 men in an inflatable at the back of my boat. At that time, I looked also. I could see a large boat on fire, probably about 400 yards from me.
Well, were they able to explain to you what had happened?
Well, they said that they had woken up to fire on board. They had actually woken the captain up, and it sounds like the captain tried to make a mayday call, but the fire was so intense, they ended up jumping off the boat. And he said they swam around to the back of the boat where they had a tender or a dinghy tied up, and then motored over to our boat, which, like I say, wasn't very far away.
Did they tell you, had they made any effort to try and save the passengers?
So when they opened the galley door, which was the main exit for those people sleeping down below, they said there was so much fire in there that even the roof tiles were on fire and falling from the ceiling already inside that galley. So there was no access for them to get into the 34 guests that were below.
Such a horrific scene, but 2 of the survivors did try to go back to the boat?
Yeah, well, we hailed the Coast Guard, and we were instructed to, I asked, what I should do, and they wanted me to just stay where I was and have the 2 of the crew members get back in their dinghy with a flashlight and go out to see if they could find any survivors that were out, had maybe gotten off and were in the water.
Had you ever seen anything like this out on the water?
Oh, never. No, nothing like this. It was horrendous. That boat was 75 feet long, and as soon as I saw it, as soon as I opened the door, it was totally engulfed in flame, all the way from the bow to the stern. Flames could have been 30 feet high. There wasn't a spot on that boat that wasn't burning. A spot on that boat that wasn't burning. Wasn't a spot on that boat that wasn't burning.
Bob Hansen, thanks for telling your story. Thank you for helping save those survivors.
Yeah, it was a horrific thing. One of those things I'll never forget.
Hey, 2 seconds. Pass harbor. Northside Santa Cruz.
What is your position and number of persons on board? Over.
3 minutes.
Roger, are they locked inside the boat? Roger, can you get back on board and unlock the boat, unlock the doors so they can get off?
Those last questions from the dispatcher go unanswered. The ship had been out on a 3-day diving excursion. When the fire broke out, it spread quickly. 5 of 6 crew members managed to escape. 9 people remain unaccounted for this morning. Searchers have been recovering bodies through the night. Officials had warned families to steel themselves for the worst, and indeed, it seems the worst has occurred. Steve Futterman is our freelance reporter, and he is on this story from Santa Barbara, California this morning. Steve, it could not be a worse story to tell us about today.
Absolutely, Heather. This was a dream trip that just turned into a tragedy. They went out on this ship from behind me. This is Santa Barbara Harbor. This is where the Conception is normally docked. This is where the ill-fated journey began. And then, of course, yesterday morning, around 3 o'clock local time is when the fire broke out. According to people who are familiar with what happened, they had very little chance of surviving. It's believed that most, if not all of the people who died or are missing were below deck sleeping in the sleeping cabins. The members of the crew that survived were awake, they were on top of the deck, and they simply jumped off. They tried to go back, but they just couldn't save anyone. Now, throughout the night, we've been talking to people here in Santa Barbara, people who are close to the maritime community, and they are just in shock right now.
Of Southern California's Santa Cruz Island after a fire on board a commercial dive boat happened on Labor Day. 20 bodies have been recovered so far. Joining us now is Ken Curtis. He's a diving instructor and the owner of Reef Seekers Dive Company. Ken knows the owner of this boat involved in this tragedy. Ken, thank you so much. I know how hard this has been on the dive community there. Do you have any sense at this hour of how a tragedy of this level, 34 people possibly killed, could have happened?
Well, and that's really, the key question. I think it's important to understand, too, that the Santa Barbara County Sheriff Brown really said it best. This happened at, like, the worst possible time. Had this happened at midnight, you would have had a number of people up. Had it happened at 6 a.m., you would have had a number of people up, and the outcome might have been different. But it happened, roughly 3:30 in the morning, when pretty much everybody's asleep. So the key questions that the dive community really wants to know would be, how did this fire start? It's not like we let people smoke on the boats or anything like that, or vape, and it's too early probably for breakfast to have been prepared. So I don't know whether it would have been a galley fire or not, but you're just thinking the timing of this is really weird. And then the other question is, how does it spread so quickly? And I think the dive community is always a community that's looking for answers. So I'd say as a community, we're very happy to know the NTSB is getting involved. Yeah. But it's just a tragedy that you would not expect, at all in terms of what we do. We go out to go dive and commune with nature and have a good time with the fish.
I mean, no escape hatch for the people on board, no fire extinguishers on board. That sounds like a death trap.
It does, except the Coast Guard guy's got it totally wrong. I think he absolutely misunderstands what he's been told. First of all, there is no way to lock people in the bunk room, even if you wanted to, which you certainly do not. There is an escape hatch at the back end of the bunk room. Whether people or not were able to access it or even knew about it, that I don't know. But that escape hatch absolutely exists. And the boat has firefighting equipment. It has fire extinguishers. It has fire hoses. So this is a situation, I think, where the one side that we're hearing, and obviously I've listened to this Mayday call a number of times, as I'm sure you understand, and you really hear that's a crew person, first of all. Let's not lose sight of the fact that only 5 of the 6 crew people made it off.
That's a crew person calling for help. But are you sure?
Yeah, that's gotta be.
I mean, you know this boat, your ability on that boat, fire extinguishers.
Absolutely. I mean,
for help. But are you sure?
Yeah, that's gotta be.
I mean, you know this boat. You're certain that it would have had firefighting capability on that boat, fire extinguishers.
Absolutely. I mean, the joke would be, I'm sure I've stubbed my toe on the fire extinguishers over the many years. But boats are required to have fire extinguishers. They're required to have fire hoses. The fire hoses, I believe, just sort of suck water out of the ocean. So once you turn it on, there's an unlimited supply. Now, that does not mean that the crew was able to access any of that stuff due to the severity of the fire.
Yeah. Ken Curtis, thanks.
Lee spent several years as a crewman and captain for Truth Aquatics. That's the name of the company that owned the diving boat that caught fire.
Every time before that boat goes out, there is a safety briefing. And when you come onto the boat and you walk through that big door, there is a sign-in sheet that you have to sign your name onto a manifest.
Under that document, Connolly explains, is where the escape hatch is located.
My wife has been on this boat many, many times, and we discussed this yesterday, and she says, I never knew there was an escape hatch on there. I said, honey, how could you not know? We explain this in the briefing every single time.
While it's still not known what caused the fire, there's a lot of information Connolly says he wants people to know about the crew and boat.
There were escape hatches. There's no propane on the boat. Everybody on the crew is very experienced. We don't know until this investigation goes further and they find out exactly what happened. But to say that, it started off as probably a small fire, I don't think so. I think it was probably a large explosion.
He also points
in the wheelhouse, trying to put out this Mayday call. The flames were coming up on him. I think that he probably had to bail off of the boat with the rest of the crew, because that's where the crew sleeps, is up in the wheelhouse.
Seconds to exit the sleeping quarters and the vessel.
One thought in mind, and that's that the fire had to have happened so fast that it didn't give any chance to the people.
Has been diving for 40 years and has been on the Conception about a half a dozen times. He told our Bay Area sister station it would normally take seconds to exit the sleeping quarters and the vessel.
One thought in mind, and that's that the fire had to have happened so fast that it didn't give any chance to the people who were sleeping.
He says you can exit the sleeping quarters using the stairs to the above deck or an escape hatch.
And as you can see, the area is well lit. And right around this area is where the hatch is located.
The crew members who jumped off the Conception as it was burning were rescued by another boat passing by. Lives on board a Labor Day weekend diving trip.
I can't remember a single tragic event that comes even close to the loss of more than 30 scuba divers in a single incident. I think this is an event of global proportions. Tragic event that comes even close to the loss of more than 30 scuba divers in a single incident. I think this is an event of global proportions.
Doomed Conception dive boat now lives in El Dorado Hills and is speaking out tonight about what he knows about the vessel.
The fire probably happened so fast that the crew was not able to get to those stations.
Scoured every inch of Truth Aquatics' 2 remaining boats exactly 1 week after a deadly fire on the Conception. The move comes after federal investigators served search warrants on the business yesterday.
My heart and my prayers go to the families and friends and everyone that's affected.
Cindy Hernandez stopped by the memorial as investigators examined a boat similar to the Conception in hopes of learning what caused the fire and why none of the 34 people below deck could escape the flames. We're told teams from the ATF, Coast Guard, and FBI were on the hunt for training, was committed, and said the company had passed all inspections.
I'm not surprised. I mean, when you have that many people die in an accident, I don't care if it's been certified by the Coast Guard or not, you're going to have a thorough investigation.
I'm not going to make too much out of it. I'm just going to, see what happens from it. I think it's important that we find out exactly what happened.
As investigators search for answers,
effect, because what was happening is after I initially hit that first hit on that corner, that's when this curtain of flame suddenly went woof. It was suddenly there. I could suddenly see a curtain of flame.
In
no
your
heat.
When you say curtain, why do you say curtain? What's the...
Normally when you explain to him exactly what is happening, because this is not normal. There's no heat, and there's a flame in front of me that's raging and just in a really weird rectangular.
Okay.
It was just, everything was wrong about it to be a fire within a room. I've attempted to tackle this fire twice and nothing's happening.
Was what you were confronted with at that moment something that you recognised from your experience, or not?
I have never seen anything like it before.
You then say in your statement, as I was looking around and visibility increased, I became confused as the location of the fridge was not where I saw the forceful curtain of flame.
Yeah.
It was more to the right.
Quite quickly, visibility did increase, and I can remember with my eyes starting to see the unit what was on the sides. And I think the thing I specifically remember was the kettle. And I started looking. I was thinking, right, okay, nothing has begun pyralisation. How did it get there? And I'm aware that I'm in a compartment. I'm in a concrete box, effectively. But there's no evidence of any fire travel or there's just no evidence of anything for why that would be there.
How you got onto a counter by the window, just
in between, perhaps what they were gaps, I don't know whether they're gaps or not, it's just black areas. Tried everything, nothing was happening. It's just bouncing off. But basically, I'm seeing what looks like sheets of metal, and the fire is. It's just really weird. You can see it's a light underneath, but you'd have these areas of, I'd imagine the joints, and every now and again you'd see a flame and then it would disappear, and you'd see a flame and it would just disappear. At that stage, on the top right-hand side, there was an area.
Yes.
And it was like it was split open. It was very odd. It was like something that punched through it.
And you say, and travelling in an upwards direction.
Yeah.
What was Mr. Brown, I've got nothing further for you. Can I say I'm very grateful to you for coming to the inquiry and helping us understand your evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds mad when I'm saying there's no heat. It's very hard to explain what is going on here, because this is just not normal.
The truth is not usually one thing that comprises many sides.